Well, the day's finally come. The world's ending, so I guess it's time to cover this. Even my art style changed for this video. Time to talk about something that's been haunting my backlog for a very long time now. Homestuck, the multimedia webcomic that took the internet by storm in April of 2009. Written by Andrew Hussey, this series has grown rather infamous by those who have interacted with its fandom. I have been informed that I can't review this yet, and the world is ending. I just got brain rot from my love of point-and-click adventure games. I forgot I'm nowhere near finishing Homestuck. Maybe next year for the anniversary, I'll cover this 9,000-page beast of a series. April Fools! Okay, time for the real video. Well, that was kind of funny, but let's talk about Homestuck. Kinda. In 2012, Andrew Hussey released his Kickstarter for the Homestuck adventure game, raising over $2 million from over 20,000 backers, most of which was not actually used to make the game. It was a very long story involving possible theft and a lot of NDAs, so instead of risking any legal problems, I will link to two videos in the description from Let Me Tell You About and Sarah Zed that go into deeper detail on the story, as well as Homestuck as a whole. To make a long story short, the game missed its estimated release by just a little bit. This game technically isn't finished since it has 4 planned acts, but it's been a bit since Act 2, and aside from some artwork, I haven't heard any news about Act 3, but if it drops while I make this video, I'll possibly review it as another April Fool's joke. You have been warned. Hiveswap is a point-and-click adventure game set in the Homestuck universe. While not directly connected to the story of the webcomic, it does share references and some character appearances that even someone like me with a secondary knowledge of the series can understand. However, it is for sure a prequel set in the 1990s. Will this game live up to the infamy of the comic that inspired it? Will it be good? Will it be bad? Will Act 3 come out before Toby Fox releases the rest of Deltarune? Let's explore Half Harley Manor and help Joey and Jude survive this monstrous home invasion. God, that's a terrible line. Just cut the video. Set in the town of Hauntwitch, we follow two kids, Joey Claire and her younger brother, Jude Harley, trying to survive a home invasion from monstrous, otherworldly creatures. Armed with only a flashlight and your wits, you must explore every nook and cranny of Joey to get up to the attic and hide from the monsters inside your home. There's a lot to explore in the surreal environment of Half Harley Manor, showing how Joey and Jude more or less live unsupervised, minus an absent father and a babysitter who seems very irresponsible and familiar to anyone with a little bit of Homestuck knowledge. Even the main characters have connections to the cast of the comic, albeit set before the comic, so no reference to Spurb, but maybe we'll get some setup in some later acts. Yeah, they're gonna do fan service, aren't they? Calling it now. After solving the puzzles of the manor to get to the attic key, the game becomes more of an isekai rather than Home Alone, as we're transported to Alternia for the second half of the game. There we meet Zephyros and find out that we've actually switched places with his friend Tetrarch Damak, a revolutionary in Alternia, trying to overthrow the Harris. In terms of the 3 playable characters of the cast, I think Joey is a fine protagonist for the age demographic when Homestuck was still at its prime and when this game was originally supposed to be released. A teenager with a knack for puzzles and a manor filled with them, her room perfectly surmises this with 90s callbacks and design. She is also written very well for a 14-year-old with resentment for her absent father and deceased mother, but still caring, especially towards her younger brother. This is especially shown in the second half when she talks to Zephyros about his toxic friendship with Damak. On the other hand, I'm not the biggest fan of Jude. His writing feels a lot like Act 1 John, but more annoying as he talks to Joey through the walkie-talkie as you explore and ask him for hints, or the brief treehouse segments where you get to play as him. I get he is a younger boy and this writing is likely to call to the relation of the cast of Homestuck, but it just feels kinda cheap. But maybe it will pay off when the rest of Hiveswap comes out, or when Hauntwitch eventually comes out and connects, but that's just wishful thinking on my part. Zephyros. I like Zephyros. I can relate to him a lot as a character. While he is oblivious, he is creative and kind. It's really charming to see him grow through the Alternia half of the game and become friends with Joey and seeing maybe my friendship with Damak isn't actually that good. I'm really hopeful that this continues to grow in Act 2. In terms of gameplay, it's a very typical point-and-click adventure game. This kind of game is very hard to mess up. Just click on objects, interact with the environment, and solve puzzles. I grew up on games like this from a very young age, like Freddy Fish and Mercer Mary's Little Career and The Great Race. I might have to make a video on that if I can learn how to make it work on Windows 10. Please someone teach me how to use DOSBox. Some of the interactions are kind of funny and quirky, but I feel like there could have been more objects to interact with and more animated objects in the overworld background. If a putt-putt game has more interesting interactive objects, you must be doing something wrong with your game. Joey does gain abilities as she obtains items, such as her tap dancing shoes to knock over piles of boxes. While cool in concept, I feel that these items are only used a handful of times and made required just so it feels like you're using something. They are probably a lot of interactions that I missed because I didn't touch every object in the game because I didn't want this video to take an extra month. Even casually, it felt like I was just doing things to unlock the next thing to do rather than exploring and finding my way to a new objective. While the manor may look big, it really disappoints me that there isn't much in each room aside from witty observations and a few lines that made me laugh. However, the strife sections are fun, almost puzzle-like battles using items from your Siladex to survive monster encounters as Joey, even briefly being able to switch in strifes between Joey and Jude. All in all, the gameplay isn't the worst, but I feel for a game that hypes up as a 90s point-and-click adventure game, the simplification does take away a lot of the charm that those games had. This may be an unpopular opinion, but separate from the fandom of the comic, I really do like the MS Paint art style of Homestuck and even the looks of the Flash animations. I really do enjoy it. So when adapting the style to Unity, an engine good with both 2D and 3D, I think Hiveswap hits the mark pretty close. The backgrounds and characters look like they'd be in Homestuck if it didn't end in 2016 and continued on a little further. Joey and Jude's designs are very good and simplistic, believable for children who grew up in 1994. Not this, whoa, radical or Alf Pogs thing that media tries to portray, just simple clothing and haircuts you'd see in your elementary or middle school yearbooks. Zephyros is about what I'd expect out of any Homestuck troll OC. I do like his and Damek's designs on the band posters, however, found in their hives. Speaking of which, their hives in the second half of the game are very cool to see in contrast to the manor. While the manor is just a complete mess by Joey and Jude, Zephyros' hive is very clean and Damek's is still a mess. This shows the duality of how trolls have to be more mature, while still being childlike in creating a mess. This and the game's soundtrack are definitely big selling points for fans of Homestuck and anyone who finds this game as blissfully unaware of what Sharpie baths are. Speaking of... This game's soundtrack is criminally good, composed by acclaimed Homestuck composers James Roach and Toby Fox. Yes, that Toby Fox. Despite being headed by Roach, Toby's influence on the soundtrack is very apparent. Each character given their own theme and themes for rooms and certain situations. Reminds me a lot of another game series Toby Fox worked on. Oh, that's right, Pokemon. Each character's theme feels like an entire sound font, Joey giving it an explorative tone, ready to find a way to the attic, while Jude's theme is more goofy as he sits in his tree fort with his Pepe Sylvia board. Zephyros' theme, however, reflects his blood color, a very slow-moving track with rusty-sounding horns. I will provide a link in the description for the Bandcamp page for anyone who would like to buy the soundtrack. I really enjoy it and can see myself using it in future videos as background audio when I don't have anything I can use. In conclusion, I think Hiveswap has a lot of potential but ended up being very mid. Aside from the long development hell it went through, there were a lot of opportunities missed, such as more branching dialogue that takes you back onto the same track. For a game based on a more or less community-driven choose-your-own-adventure comic, it stayed very linear in terms of its gameplay pipeline. From here's the problem to here's your prize and the next problem to solve. I am hopeful this will be improved on in Act 2, that's why my final score for Hiveswap Act 1 is a 7 out of 10, a C on my scale. This isn't the end of the Homestuck adjacent content for this year, far from it. Join me again on April 13th when I talk about Act 2, and also talk about Friendsim because I kind of forgot it existed until I started working on this mini retrospective. Until next time, please like, comment, subscribe. I will see you soon.